Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Women Talk Tech. In today's episode, I am joined by Adriana Hurduc, Strategic Talent Acquisition Manager at Cavalry Ventures. With experience at the likes of Babbel, HelloFresh, and Clue, Adriana has an extensive amount of experience in the HR world. In this chat, Adriana and I discuss her role in planting the seed of hiring, good culture, and all things D&I in founders in the very early stages. We also discuss her thoughts on D&I strategies for Series A plus companies and the role founders then play on retaining talent and being the role models for the company. A great conversation, I must say. I hope you enjoy it. So, Adriana, tell me a little bit more about yourself.
So I'm Adriana, originally from Romania, and I actually been living in Germany for quite some years already. And I had the chance to work in the talent acquisition field for about 9 years now, having the chance to get the exposure to different companies at different stages, including like hyper growth stage and early days Series A companies. So quite a, I would say, broad spectrum of companies.
Nice. And tell me a bit more about your career journey so far. I think it's always good to look back and see how you got to where you are, why you are in the position you're in now. So, yeah, tell us a bit more about your career journey.
So during the time that I gained experience as a talent acquisition manager, I had the chance to work with different founders, different teams, exposed to different challenges and I guess also different ways of thinking. Um, and I think the most important position is right now, joining a venture capital firm. I joined Cavalry Ventures about 2.5 years ago. And the reason why I joined that is because, I found it beneficial to be able to work with the founders directly to try to kind of like support them create, let's say, a more healthier people organization from the beginning, as Cavalry is investing in pre-seed companies, so very early days, even like pre-product basically. So usually also there's just like one or two founders part of the team at the stage. So um, it's quite exciting to be able to work with them, and in the moment we have over like 50 companies in the portfolio, and had the chance to work with different types of founders, ideas, and so on and so forth. Yeah, so quite challenging, but it's been great so far.
Love that. And of course, I'm sure a lot about your role now, especially when working with the founders so very early on. I
Mhm.
guess you are the person that kind of plants the seed about culture, about people, about what this should look like. I guess from your side and the help that you've been given, what does a good culture look like for you, especially in that kind of early stage where, like you said, it's pre-product, nothing, nothing's really there yet. How do you kind of go about looking for or helping them build that good culture from the very, very early stages?
Yeah. This is a typical question they basically ask you, like, who can support you build the culture? And I'm like, oh, well, you're the culture, basically. At least in pre-seed, seed stage, and Series A, of course, you're the culture. You're representing the culture of the company because, in the end, you're building your own company, and you need to build a team that can actually work with you, understand the product that you're trying to build, the problem that you're trying to fix, I guess. So usually just try to build a team and the culture around who you are. Just don't try to, I don't know, ask someone external or build like hire I don't know, a people manager to tell them like build the culture of the company, right? But also what I suggest them is like not to stress too much on the topic at that stage, mainly because they need to build the product first, and like just be a human being with everyone that you hire, and I guess everything else is going to work out.
Yeah, really interesting. How have you found your role as a woman in this space? Because I'm sure I hate to say it, but I'm sure you are working with a lot more male founders than you are female, right? How have you found it?
Yes, definitely working with more like male founders at this stage. Um, it can be challenging. First of all, it has been challenging for me because, I transitioned for a position where I did the job, and now I'm more in an advisory position, which means that I don't get to do the job anymore, right? I just get to talk to them, understand their problems, and guide them towards like what they should do in order to fix or adapt or whatever. But um, I guess from an advisory perspective, I didn't find it as difficult to work with them. Mainly because in the end, it's not about the being a female male collaboration, but rather, I guess, is the willingness of the founders to like accept, adapt, or ignore in the end the advice that you give, because in the end, they're also just building still their own company, and you can only advise on like what they should do better, maybe. But I had everything, right? I had founders that accepted, I had founders that came back to me with questions, and I worked with them very closely. Some were present but not really, dropped the ball, and some completely ignored it, and it's like, it's up to them. It is difficult because sometimes you have the tendency to think like, oh, maybe it's because of me. But it's not, I guess. You just have to adapt to the fact that when you're in an advisory position, they can take the advice or not, no matter if you're a female, male, or whatever you want to name yourself. So yeah.
Yeah. And I guess it's more about the approach or the kind of mindset you have. Like you said, right, not taking it personally if they do or do not take your advice, whether whether you're male or female, right? This founder will take whatever advice they want to take, right?
Yeah, definitely. And in the first I guess 6 months or so in the position, I took it quite personally because I was like, you have to do this. This is important. This is very important and crucial for your company. But then you just learn to adapt that in the end, yeah, you're not working in house anymore. You don't do the job yourself. And founders have a lot of different priorities at that stage. So I guess you just have to adapt.
Yeah, and like you said, right, you mentioned in the very beginning stages, right, diversity and inclusion does take a bit of a backseat. It's a very difficult topic or very difficult thing for companies to think about when they have no product, no team. So hiring diverse people or trying to build a diverse team is near enough impossible, right? It's not there. So I think the focus there then shifts to just building that product, making sure they can actually then hire that team. What's the main issue here? Have you found this to work? Do companies that do it that way find it easier to then build a diverse team, or have you found companies that do try and do that bit from the beginning easier from that? How does that work?
Yeah. So, I mean, I would just want to, I guess, lay it out there that I'm not a diversity and inclusion expert. I think I'm far from being that. But, when it comes to like pre-seed seed stage, what I'm trying to do, I'm just trying to educate basically the founders on, the benefits and importance of having a diverse team now or later. But in the end, it is quite impossible for them to reach that stage because in pre-seed and seed stage you have nothing, right? Or like in pre-seed you have nothing, you're basically just a handful of people trying to build something and have an idea. And if you get funding, your funding is very limited, and as we know, hiring diverse teams can take a significant amount of time. And also, if you're a founder and you have an expertise in, let's say, technology or whatever, um, you don't probably know exactly how to attract the diverse candidates, how to assess them,
Yeah.
and so on and so forth. So I think for them it's also a challenge from this perspective, but they do not have the luxury of time, unfortunately, to do that. I had founders that really tried to build diverse teams from the beginning, and unfortunately, it ate a lot of the runway that they had. And unfortunately, yes, things have been delayed significantly. Um, but then also I had founders that decided, look, if I'm going to have, um, candidates in the pipeline that, would be considered a diverse talent, I will definitely consider them, but I will not actively, source this talent. I mean, you don't have a brand, you don't have a product, you have nothing. It's very difficult to attract this kind of talent at that stage. So um, it is important to be realistic that you cannot do much. And what I try to do with them is just plant that seed over there that like, if you don't have the luxury of time and knowledge to take care of diverse talent at that stage, make sure that when you kind of like transition from seed to series A, you already have people in place, especially in the people team, that can support you to actually build a strategy on that end, and then start from there. Um, and also, we are really trying, and actually the entire team at Cavalry is trying to educate the founders on actually being also an inclusive employer, right? Um, because it's one thing to actually bring the diverse talent in, but then in the end, if you're not inclusive enough, then what is the point, right? Like, just make sure that you educate yourself on like what that means. And they usually have this chance to educate a bit more towards series A onwards.
Yeah, interesting. And let's kind of dive a bit deeper into that because I'm really keen to discuss. Okay, I've got to Series A now. Now I need to kind of think about it, right? Or now is the time too that I have the resources, I have the time. So yeah, I'm at a stage where I'm, say hypothetically, we're at Series A now. I guess I'm really keen to kind of know a bit more about your strategy when helping these companies put together a D&I plan. How do you kind of go about it? What's your kind of go-to strategy for this?
Mm-hmm. So I usually don't really do that with them myself, mainly because they already have a people team to support them with that. So what I'm trying to do, I'm just trying to encourage them, as sometimes also like, coming or like advice coming from the investor can be taken a bit more like seriously, I would say. I don't know if seriously is the right word, but they would probably just pay a bit more attention to that, compared to being in-house. At least this is what I felt when I was working in-house. It just feels like the founders don't see you. Um, so I'm trying to, at least on my end, I'm just trying to work with the founders to make sure that they implement some kind of like strategy, or like kick off a project on like how to become more diverse and more inclusive from now, and from this moment onwards, basically. um, yeah, so that's what I'm doing. So I wouldn't say that I support them with coming up with a strategy, because I unfortunately also don't have the luxury of time to do
Yeah,
that with them. Yeah.
yeah. So your spot is more from an advice point of view, like providing that advice on why it's
Yeah.
important. I guess that then leaks to the point about people, product and culture, right? Because I guess
Yeah.
your advice would come in from that point. Why is that important? I guess looking at the topic of culture, looking at the topic of the product, the kind of very early stages. Why is that important, or why have you found that important when looking to kind of go into hiring diverse talent and women specifically?
um, So I had the chance to work with multiple companies, and I have seen like how easy or difficult it was for them to attract diverse talent.
Yeah.
And I guess what I have observed is usually like, if you speak about women, they're usually more interested to join a product that has an impact, right? That brings actually good to the world, and it's just not trying to make the founders reach from one year to the other. So this has a huge impact, and obviously, we all have, I don't know, we all grew up differently. We all have different ideas about the world and the jobs that we want to have, and so on and so forth. So, while working at Clue, which is a product that supports like female health, which is a taboo subject in like so many countries still and cultures. Um, that was one of the companies I had absolutely no issues to hire women. Like, I was actually overwhelmed with the amount of women interested to join that team. There were just certain areas that were like very technical, where also like you don't have that many females, covering those jobs. Like, for example, a DevOps engineer, right? How
Yeah.
many like female DevOps engineers are out there? Like, it's a very, very, very tiny percentage of female, covering that position. Um, and then it was also like quite good when we were in when I was in HelloFresh. Again, they were just trying to reduce the food waste that we produce. Women were quite interested to join that team as well. But we also have companies in the portfolio that are like 100% technical companies, and yeah, it is a challenge for them to actually hire females, especially like if you look at their engineering teams. Their engineering teams are almost 100% male at this point, even in Series A, just because they're very technical products, right? They might, support companies to I guess, reduce costs, but they don't necessarily like bring such a huge impact like the products that I have mentioned earlier. So then I guess it's easier to attract women there. And then for the other ones, it's not impossible. It's just like you probably have to build a proper strategy, a proper employer brand, and you need to make it visible out there in order to attract. But that is going to be more work to be done rather than the other products.
Yeah, no, really interesting because you're so right. Women want to work on a product, not just women, but it's more important, I would say, for women to work on a product that they see as important. They see the social impact. Clue's a really good example, but equally, there are probably so many other companies that
Of course.
just attract lots of females just for the nature of what they do. And how do if a company's not doing that, how do they even change this? I guess, what advice do you provide to those companies that, let's say, their product doesn't attract females, say, what sort of advice do you give to those sorts of companies in your portfolio?
Well, I give more like a personal advice because I have the feeling that the best employer brand is actually your current team and how you treat your current team. And if you treat them accordingly and you make sure that you are a good employer from all perspectives, then it's going to be easy to attract good talent and diverse talent and women and whatever you want to hire. Just because, also as human beings, we're looking for, respect, appreciation, and so on and so forth. So I guess, if you do that as a founder, this would have, a significant I guess result down the way.
Interesting. And yeah, I think the founders founders play a very, very key role. I know you mentioned before, if a founder, say, has an open mind, then everyone else will. It's all about the team, it's all about the people. I guess,
Exactly.
you know, on your side, how do you help with founders who are possibly having issues with this? Say, having issues with having not having an open mind. What sort of
Yeah.
how do you go about helping companies or founders really struggling with that? Because it starts from the top.
Yeah. It is a challenge. It's very difficult. And each case is different in the end, so it's not that all of them behave the same. So what we're trying to do, obviously, like trying to bring in resources to support them to understand the benefits, let's say. um but then what we're doing, we're also making use of all the network basically that we have and all the other founders that we have in the portfolio. So we're just trying to connect them with each other and discuss the challenges, because sometimes it's also probably the feedback that you get or the advice that you get from a founder that already went through a certain stage or a certain situation is probably well better received than coming from the investor side. So we're just trying to support the communication and knowledge sharing between them, because we have seen this works quite well. So we had founders that actually for example, build people teams after talking with different founders that have done so because they didn't really want it to do so initially, or at the stage that they were at. So um, it can have a huge impact. So this is what we're trying to do. Yeah, just try to kind of like guide them to understand the benefits of it, rather than just telling them you have to do so, right? Because in the end they have to change their own mind and they need to understand it. Because if they don't, they're just not gonna do it. So this is how, or this is our approach. And of course, from Series A's, there's going to be also like other investors coming on board, and they probably have also like way more resources to support the founders with the topic. And we see the impact of the larger investors as well coming on board, with more resources to support them. So it's definitely not just on us, but it's on the other investors as well.
Yeah, yeah. And on the topic of resources, if you don't mind me asking, what resources do you then provide? I mean, other than the kind of networking, is it like conferences they can go on, or yeah, what resources do you provide to the founders that are struggling with this?
Just generally just trying to connect with founders, maybe connect them with people from the industry, with experts. um, they're not at the stage where they're going to attend a lot of conferences on the topic or events on the topic, or invest in tools or whatever, just because they don't have the, I guess, the cash
Yeah,
to do so at that stage. So it's rather, we're just trying to focus a bit more, as I said, on educating them with information, sharing articles with them, sharing results. Obviously, like I try to keep updated on what are the latest, let's say, what are they called, reports out there and the impact of it. Just try to share it with them, and obviously just work from there. But other than that, yes, you can say to them, or like mention to them, yeah, read this book or whatever. Are they gonna do it with that many things on mind? I don't think so. Like, let's be realistic, they're probably not gonna do it, unless they are like 100% motivated, or like they build a product that has an impact and they really want to target a specific, like if you want to target like females, or whatever, then they might do it. But other than that, I'm almost 100% sure they're not going to do it. So
yeah, yeah. There's,
so
there's so
in
many other
articles, I'm just trying to find the ones that are quite like easy to go through and have like the most important data. Otherwise, it's very difficult to, I guess, convince them to spend like, I don't know, half an hour to read that, instead of building the product for another half an hour, whatever. So yeah, it's you just have to learn to accept that they are going to spend certain amount of time, on certain topics at different stage of the company. So it is what it is.
Yeah, yeah. And I look at D&I, from two angles, right? You have to, you have to attract diverse talent, but you also have to retain them. I'm really keen to kind of look at both sides here with you, because I think you've actually got the kind of experience and advice actually when you have to give that to founders, right? Looking at the attracting side and how to attract that diverse talent. When you're sitting with founders, say, what advice do you give them to help them attract more diverse talent?
I guess first of all, we're starting from educating them what recruitment means. Because maybe, I mean, there's a high chance they have never done it themselves before, so they don't even know what the recruitment process is. So you just start from educating there. You help them create realistic, job descriptions, and support them with cleaning that up, and get out all the wording that is like, oh, we're looking for exceptional talent, or the best talent out there, or whatever. It's like, sure. And then just work with them on like the recruitment process, educate them a bit on like how to run interviews, what to look at. Sometimes I offer to shadow them in interviews. I give them feedback, how they communicate with the people after that, and so on and so forth. So basically, you just have to do education and end-to-end recruitment process, because they have probably never done it before, or they just interviewed people because they were part of the recruitment process, right? um, so usually this is what I spend my time with them.
So yeah, I guess so that's really interesting on the topic of attracting talent. It starts from the job spec, it starts from the recruiting, but equally, right, once founders have actually done all that work to attract that talent, the next part comes in, right? It's retaining them. And I think you said that something you found with a lot of companies you've worked with is that retaining talent is a kind of tricky thing, especially at the early stage, right, where there might be little culture, small teams, so it does play a big part. What's the main issue here that you found with founders struggling to retain that diverse talent or just talent in general?
um, so again, we're just going to basics, right? In pre-seed and seed stage, it's all about basics. You start from scratch with absolutely everything. And on the retaining of the talent, usually the founders just come to you, or like they have the expectations that um, the entire team that they hire has to be fully independent, and they should just run on their own for the entire period of time without them doing anything. um, yeah, but what I usually do, I just try to understand what their approach is, and how first of all, how do they communicate, how do they treat talent, how do they give feedback to talent, do they give feedback to talent? If not, like, maybe let's work on that. Do they compensate the talent accordingly at that point? What are they promising to the talent that is in house as well? So just working on, as I said, the basics at that point. And usually, what I suggest them to do, first of all, not overcomplicate things at that point, because you don't, and first of all, you don't have the knowledge to complicate things. And it might be a chaos. So just do basics, right? Make sure that, you implement, I guess, communication in the team, no matter how you want to do it, right? All hands, one-on-ones, how often do you want them to be? Communication between departments, if you have departments, or if they can be called departments. If it's just one people person, just like
Yeah,
representing a department, is like, make sure that you have that inclusive, make sure that you include some kind of, like, I guess, feedback processes. Make sure that you give feedback to people, I don't know, once a quarter, every 6 months or so. It depends, like, how much time you have, how big is the team, and so on and so forth. But, like, just do the basics, right, in order to retain talent. And of course, just like treat them with, I guess, respect, and communicate, because usually what I have seen is that founders don't really give proper feedback to talent, and then they get frustrated that they're not doing their job. But it's also, like, not their fault. It's like, you just become a founder sometimes, and you don't have the knowledge yourself. um, but it's important to ask. So I have a lot of the founders just reaching out to me and asking me, like, look, this is what I'm doing, and am I doing it correctly or not? And this is what we usually want, right? We want them to reach us, and ask, like, I'm trying to implement this, whatever new feedback process. Is this correct or not? Or this is the feedback I get from people. What should I do with it? Right? Because in the end, also, like, they get feedback from employees and they don't do anything with it. So, as I said, it's a lot of basics. It's really basics. So it's nothing fancy. It's just basics that I'm trying to cover with them.
yeah, because you're so right. At the very early stages, right, the founder's mind is in so many places, and talent is a massive factor. People is a massive factor, but actually having the product there is also a massive part of actually how you can continue to build the business.
Exactly. Yes, I think you just have to find the right balance between all of them. It can be quite difficult. There's going to be I'm 100% sure that most of the companies that went through those stages, they had also a lot of people, like, coming and going, mainly because a lot of things change, strategies change, thing is changing, product is changing, sometimes they need to pivot, and so on and so forth. So there's a lot of fluctuation, basically, between, I guess, pre-seed stage and Series A, and you just need to accept it. It is what it is.
Yeah.
And yeah, just make the founders aware that it shouldn't be massive, because that is going to cost them a lot of money and a lot of the runway, basically. um, but it's basics. It's literally basics.
Yeah, yeah. And I guess just to kind of wrap things up, because we have covered quite a lot here, you know,
Yeah.
just to kind of wrap things up, as a founder, say it's me, I'm really struggling now with D&I. If I could take three pieces of advice away from yourself, or get three pieces of advice that you would actually give me, because I'm really struggling with D&I now, I'm really struggling with people and culture, and of course, I don't know where to start. What sort of things would you advise for people to begin with as a founder now, when actually starting to think about D&I?
That is a tough question, I
Yeah,
guess,
like,
because there's so many things, right, you should consider, I guess. If you're a first time founder, and if you're also, like, let's say, quite young, I would say, first of all, look in the mirror. um, I think, again, like, go back to the basics, right? Treat people as you want to be treated, and treat your team the same, because in the end, they're just going to give back, and they're going to work quite well with you if you do that. Be open minded. Read quite a bit about what that means, because yeah, we are not born knowledgeable, so you have to read quite a bit. um, and communicate, in my opinion, at that stage as well. You have to communicate significantly with the team, with other people in the industry, with other founders, with whoever you want to talk with, but just communicate with people and ask questions. So I would say, again, the basics of yeah, implementing that, because further down the way, you're going to have knowledgeable team members coming on board that can support you to take the topic at a different stage, train the team, of course, if you have an open mind as well, and you care about the topic, and you don't see people just as numbers, which, if you do, it's a bit of a problem.
yeah, yeah. No, honestly,
Yeah.
really helpful advice there. I think, we tend no, but we tend to underestimate the very basics. I think as well, as founders, I've seen they tend to get super stressed. Sometimes they're by themselves. They're wearing thousands of hats, right? Building a company, finding,
Yeah.
doing hiring. Like you mentioned, right? Most founders have probably never hired a team by themselves before. They've probably worked with and alongside people. So hiring
Yeah.
in general is difficult. Not to mention hiring diverse talent is actually then icing on top of, right?
A lot of them don't even know what diverse means. So I guess, you just have to start with basics again. What does that mean?
I think it's really important, right, to let them know, because I think otherwise, if you leave it too late, it's then too late to rectify the damage, or not damage, but the issues that you've had, because you've now got
Yeah.
an all male, tech team, or all male company. And, let's
Yeah.
be honest, what female is going to want to join a 50-person startup where there's not one female? That's
Thank you very much for having me. It has been a pleasure.